In the recent America's Got Talent, one of the finalists was a man who had been wrongfully imprisoned for 40 years, but God was with him and finally gave him justice and he was released. I want to tell you a story about another man named Joseph who was wrongfully imprisoned for 10 years. But the prison administrator trusted him and set him over the whole prison. One morning he saw two prisoners who looked very discouraged. He said, "Hey, what's the problem?" They said, "During the night we each had a dream and we don't know the interpretations of the dream." Now God had given Joseph the ability to interpret dreams. So he told them the interpretations and the dreams came true exactly as Joseph had said. 2 years later, God gave the king of Egypt two dreams. In the first dream, he was sitting beside the Nile River and he saw 7 fat, healthy cows come up out of the river. And then he saw 7 thin, sickly cows come up, and the sickly cows swallowed up the 7 fat cows, but afterwards they were just as thin as before. In the second dream, he saw a single stalk of wheat with 7 fat, healthy heads of wheat. Then 7 thin, scrawny heads grew up and swallowed up the 7 fat heads, but afterwards they were just as thin as before. In the morning he called together all his wise men and told them the dreams, but none of them could interpret the dreams. One of his servants said, "When I was in prison, there was a young Hebrew slave. I had a dream and he interpreted it for me, and it came true exactly as he said." So the king called for Joseph to come out of prison. And he said, "I believe you can interpret dreams." Joseph said, "No, I can't interpret dreams, but God can give the king the interpretation of his dreams." The king said, "In my dream I was sitting beside the Nile River and I saw 7 fat, healthy cows come up out of the river. Then 7 thin, sickly cows came up and swallowed up the 7 fat cows, and afterwards they were just as thin as before. In my second dream I saw a single stalk of wheat with 7 fat, healthy heads. And then 7 thin, scrawny heads came up and swallowed the 7 fat heads, but afterwards they were just as thin as before." Joseph said, "God is telling the king in advance what he's going to do. He's going to give the land of Egypt 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine." If I may give the king some advice, let the king choose a wise man and set him over the whole of Egypt and appoint supervisors in each province to collect 1/5 of the grain harvest for the 7 years of plenty and store it in storehouses, so that Egypt will not be devastated in the 7 years of famine. The king said, "Where can we find a man as intelligent as Joseph?" So he set Joseph over the whole of Egypt with supervisors to collect 1/5 of all the grain during the 7 years of plenty, which Joseph stored and overflowed the storehouses. So God not only escaped Joseph from prison, but escaped the land of Egypt from devastation during the 7 years of famine. God is the ultimate escape artist.